The Disappearance of Maura Murray, 2004. It was a cold February evening in 2004 when Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student, made a fateful decision that would change her life and the lives of those who loved her forever. On the surface, everything seemed normal. She was a promising college student with a bright future ahead of her. But then, on a quiet stretch of rural road in New Hampshire, Maura's car crashed, and she vanished without a trace. What seemed like a routine accident soon spiraled into one of the most perplexing and chilling mysteries of the 21st century. As the winter wind howled through the trees, a passerby noticed Maura's car off the road, its headlights still on. She was nowhere to be found. No skid marks, no footprints leading away from the car, no evidence at all. At first, authorities believed she had simply gotten cold feet and fled the scene, but the more they investigated, the more complex the situation became. No one could explain why she would abandon her car in the middle of nowhere, why she would leave behind her belongings, her ID, her wallet, and even her cell phone. Where did she go, and why? The first question that swirled in the minds of those following Maura's disappearance was simple yet chilling. Did she know something others didn't? Could her disappearance be linked to something much darker, something far more sinister than a typical runaway case? And more importantly, could the clues hidden in her final moments provide any answers, or were they deliberately designed to lead investigators into a maze with no exit? There was no shortage of theories. Some believed she was a victim of foul play, abducted by someone who knew the area. Others speculated that she had staged her own disappearance, tired of her life and wanting to escape it all. But one thing was undeniable. Maura's case wasn't just any missing persons case. There was something about it that drew people in, a haunting mystery that refused to let go. The circumstances of that night were puzzling, but what made Maura's story even more unsettling was the lack of any concrete evidence or witnesses to her disappearance. No one saw her leave the scene of the accident, and no one came forward with information that could explain where she went. She simply vanished. The silence was deafening, and the questions multiplied. Did she walk off into the wilderness? Was she abducted by someone? Did she have a secret she was running from? Or perhaps was the truth even darker than anyone had imagined? As the days turned into weeks, the search for Maura intensified, but the trail remained cold. There were occasional sightings reported, but none of them panned out. The investigation seemed to hit a wall, and yet, with every dead end, the mystery of her disappearance only deepened. Why had Maura, a young woman with so much ahead of her, made such a strange and sudden decision to disappear? What was going through her mind in the hours leading up to that fateful moment? The town of Haverhill, New Hampshire, where Maura was last seen, became a focal point of the investigation. Locals spoke in hushed tones about the incident, and rumors began to spread. Was there something about that particular stretch of road that made people vanish? Did Maura know something about the area that others didn't? The more the community dug into the case, the more it seemed like the road itself was a character in this unsettling story, a silent witness to something much larger than anyone could comprehend. For years, Maura's case remained unsolved, with few new leads emerging. Yet the story of her disappearance continued to captivate the public's imagination. It wasn't just about a missing girl. It was about the absence, the unanswered questions, the haunting sense of something left unfinished. The world could not stop wondering, what happened to Maura Murray? Could it be that the answers were there all along, hidden in plain sight? Or was Maura's disappearance part of a larger, more complex puzzle, one that no one had yet figured out? Time passed, but the mystery refused to fade. Maura's family and friends held on to hope, even as the chances of finding her alive grew slimmer. Her father, in particular, became a tireless advocate for the search, refusing to let his daughter's case fall into obscurity. He knew, deep down, that someone knew what happened to Maura, that there were people out there who held the key to unraveling the mystery. But who were they? And why had they stayed silent for so long? Years later, new details emerged, some contradicting earlier findings. Could it be that Maura had been in distress before the accident, possibly dealing with personal struggles or emotional turmoil? Could the crash have been an impulsive decision in the midst of a mental breakdown? Theories about Maura's state of mind before she disappeared began to surface, adding a new layer of complexity to an already tangled case. But despite the passage of time, there remained one haunting question that continued to echo through the investigation. Where was Maura Murray? What had happened in the minutes, hours, and days after she disappeared from that stretch of road? Was she still out there, living a life in hiding, or had something far worse occurred that night? Some believed that Maura had fallen victim to the darkness of the woods, her body swallowed by the unforgiving landscape. Others clung to the hope that she was out there somewhere, living a life far removed from the tragedy of that night. The mystery was far from over. Each new piece of information added more weight to the uncertainty, and yet no one could solve the puzzle. It seemed as though the truth was always just out of reach, like a fleeting shadow. Then came the moment when a new lead, a new breakthrough, suddenly ignited hope once again. Could it be that after all these years, the investigation was finally heading in the right direction? Or was this just another false start, another dead end in the search for Maura? With every new lead came more questions, more possibilities, and more uncertainty. The mystery seemed to grow with each passing day. The story of Maura Murray is a story that refuses to be forgotten. Her disappearance is not just an unsolved case. It is a living, breathing enigma that continues to haunt the minds of those who hear it. The mystery surrounding her fate is a puzzle that refuses to be solved, and every time it seems like the answers might finally surface, they slip further into the darkness. What happened to Maura Murray? That is the question that still lingers, unanswered, and the search for the truth continues, because for Maura the story is far from over. The years that followed Maura's disappearance were filled with whispers, theories, and a relentless pursuit of answers. Each year, the case seemed to fade from the public eye, but every so often, a new piece of information would surface, and the fire of curiosity would be reignited. Each development brought with it a sense of fleeting hope, hope that the puzzle would finally be solved, hope that someone, somewhere, held the key to Maura's fate. Yet despite all the efforts, the truth remained as elusive as ever, dancing, just out of reach. One of the most puzzling elements of Maura's case was the fact that she was seen acting strangely in the days leading up to her disappearance. Some say she was emotionally distant, her behavior erratic, even in the days before the crash. Was this a sign of something deeper? A troubled mind on the brink of collapse, perhaps, overwhelmed by the pressures of her life? Or was there something more sinister at play? It was as if Maura had been living a life just out of view, one where the pressures, the stresses, and the secrets she was hiding all collided in one devastating moment. A new theory emerged, one that suggested Maura's crash wasn't just a random accident, but might have been a cry for help. Some pointed to a recent string of troubling events in her life: failed exams, arguments with friends, and a strained relationship with her family. Could she have been running from a life she felt was slipping away, making a desperate attempt to escape? Was the crash a final act of rebellion against the life she felt trapped in? Or had she been attempting to take her own life, only for fate to intervene and leave her somewhere in between? Adding to the complexity was Maura's behavior in the hours just before she vanished. According to reports, she had been driving in the snowstorm late at night, despite her father's attempts to reach her. A call had been made from her phone shortly before the crash, but who was on the other end of that call? And what exactly was said? Was Maura seeking comfort, or was she in the midst of a breakdown? The details of that phone call remain shrouded in mystery, adding another layer of intrigue to the case. Whoever was on the other end of that line, they would forever be connected to her disappearance, whether they knew it or not. As the search for Maura intensified, so too did the theories about what had happened in the days that followed her disappearance. Some speculated that she had stumbled into the nearby woods, her body eventually lost to the harsh winter conditions. Others suggested that she may have been picked up by someone, perhaps someone familiar with the area who could navigate the thick woods and treacherous terrain better than law enforcement. If Maura had been abducted, who had taken her? What could they possibly want with a young woman with no apparent enemies? The questions only seemed to multiply, leading investigators down countless dead ends. Amid the confusion and speculation, something strange began to happen. Despite the vastness of the search, there were no sightings of Maura. No one came forward with a credible story of seeing her on foot. No one remembered hearing her scream, and no one could piece together her whereabouts after the accident. She was like a ghost, vanishing into the night without a trace. This unnerving silence became a haunting characteristic of the case, like a missing puzzle piece that never turned up. Yet even in the midst of all this, the mystery refused to die. Over the years, several people, including true crime enthusiasts and armchair detectives, became obsessed with Maura's case, retracing her steps, analyzing her every move, and proposing new theories. Could Maura have been running away from something more than just her problems, perhaps a deep, personal secret she could no longer live with? Could her actions in the days before her disappearance have been a calculated decision to break free from the life she felt imprisoned by? The more people tried to piece together her life, the more they realized that Maura, in many ways, was a puzzle herself. In 2017, a new lead surfaced. A man claimed he had seen Maura in the woods near the scene of the accident, alone and wandering, her clothes soaked by the cold rain. Could this be the break investigators had been waiting for? Could it be that after all these years, someone had finally seen her? But as quickly as the lead had come, it too fizzled out, leaving only more questions in its wake. Was this a genuine sighting, or was it simply wishful thinking from someone who had become too involved in the mystery? The truth, as always, remained frustratingly out of reach. Despite these setbacks, there were moments when the case felt close to resolution. In 2020, new forensic technologies and techniques gave investigators hope that they might be able to revisit the case with fresh eyes. With the emergence of new DNA technology, it seemed possible that new evidence could be uncovered, perhaps shedding light on whether Maura had been in contact with anyone that night, or if something more nefarious had been at play. Yet even with these advancements, the same question lingered. Why had Maura vanished without a trace? Was she hiding, or had she simply become another victim of a world that swallowed her whole? For now, the disappearance of Maura Murray remains one of the most perplexing and enduring mysteries in modern history. The questions continue to haunt all who encounter her story. Was Maura's disappearance a cry for help, an act of desperation, or something far darker? Did she simply run away to escape, or is there something more to her story, something hidden in the shadows? And perhaps, most chilling of all, what happened to her in those final moments before the crash? Was she alone, or was someone else involved? With no answers, the mystery remains unsolved, and the hope that one day the truth will come to light persists in the hearts of all who search for Maura.